Well, guys, today we're going to be wrapping up this series we've been in over the last several weeks called Time Well Spent. And if you haven't been here over the last couple weeks, I really want to encourage you to go online, to listen, to watch, to catch up. And I really want you to do it. And the reason why is because of what we're talking about. We're talking about one of the most important topics we could possibly talk about, which is time. Because as your time goes, so goes your life, because your time is your life, and your life is your time. In fact, one of the most, impressive quotes that really kind of captures how important time is comes from the late Steve Jobs. And if you're not familiar with who Steve Jobs is, he pretty much changed the world. He may even changed your world, because all Apple products, he's the guy behind so much technology that has changed the way we do life. And Steve said this about time. I love this quote. He says, "It's really clear that the most precious resource we all have is time." In other words, to Steve, he said, there's nothing more precious than time. It is so clear to me. And the reason why, if you know Steve's story, is because shortly before this, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and given a very short time to live. In other words, he had this perspective that life is short. That, man, my time is running out. He is looking at, his prototype Apple Watch, and he's looking the seconds, watching the seconds. And literally, I can imagine every single second that ticked. There were moments in Steve's life before he passed away that he felt his life was ticking away. He knew how precious time was. In fact, I love his speech that he gave to Stanford University and to a large group of college students. He's standing there. He told 3 stories. And in his speech to these students, he gives us this incredible perspective. He says, this is one of the coolest things, one of the best tools I've ever been given. And the question is, Steve, what's one of the best tools you've ever been given? This guy is brilliant in every sense of the way. And he tells us, look at this. He says this: remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life. Almost everything, all external expectations, all pride, all fear of embarrassment or failure, these things just fall away in the face of death, leaving only what is truly important. Can you imagine that? This is Steve Jobs we're talking about. He is at the pinnacle of all pinnacles of the world of technology. He is in the know of everyone. And this guy says, the most important tool I've ever been given is death, is the reality that knowing my time is ticking away. Because he said, it changed my perspective. And if you're willing to change your perspective, it will change your life. And it changed his life. And then fast forward just a few short years thereafter, on October 5th of 2011, Steve, he passed away. His time was up. And guys, any time someone passes away, I experience a lot of emotion and I think a lot of thoughts. But there are 2 words that always come to my mind when I hear someone passes away. And the 2 words are, they know. They now know. In other words, they know what's to come. That's the greatest mystery, what's to come. They now know. They know what's meaningful and purposeful. They now know what eternity is. They now know about God. They now know about Jesus. They now know what you should and shouldn't have done with your time, what is meaningful and not meaningful, how you should have related in your relationships. They now know that your life today has a direct impact and correlation with your life to come. They now know. And today, in this very moment, it's an interesting reality to think about. Steve knows. Right now, he knows. He knows exactly what eternity is all about. He knows what's to come when your time is up. He knows what you should and shouldn't be doing with your time. He knows where you're going to find comfort and security and meaning and purpose in life. He knows. And if we could just get a little glimpse of that, if we could just go, Steve, could you just show us like the 5 bullet points? If you could just give us a little bit of perspective and help us understand what is to come in the life to come. Oh my gosh, it would change the way I do life. It would change what I do with my time. Because if we can change our perspective, it changes the direction of our life. So today, as we wrap this whole series up on time well spent, that's what I want to talk about. In fact, today I want us to hear from somebody who actually knows what it's like on the other side, who knows what's most meaningful and purposeful in this life and the life to come, who knows what's going to bring you joy, lasting joy, who knows how you should spend your time, who knows how your life today and every decision you make, every relationship, it is not dismissive, it is not little. Who knows that your life today and your decisions and your relationships, as trivial as you may think they are, have a profound impact on what's to come. And the person who knows all of that, his name is Jesus. That Jesus knows. In fact, what's really interesting, and you may have not thought about this, or maybe you've never read this, is that Jesus said this. He's like, I know. In fact, in John chapter 6, Jesus is talking to this massive crowd. It's thousands of people. And logically, you would say, yes, it would be thousands of people because he just fed 5,000 people in a miraculous way. He just walked on water in a miraculous way. And now the crowds, you can imagine, are massive. They are thousands and thousands. And so he is teaching them all these profound truths. And in John chapter 6, he looks at them, thousands of people, and he says these words. He says, for I have come down from heaven, not to do my will, but to do the will of him who sent me. In other words, Jesus says to that crowd and to every single one of us today, guys, I have come from heaven. I have come from the life that's after this life. In other words, I know what it's all about. I know the adventure. I know the meaning and purpose. I know what you should do in this life and how it has a direct correlation in the life to come. I know because I have come from heaven. That's my home. That's my reality. I am here just a very short, finite time to explain some very profound and important things to you. But my home is heaven, and I know all about it. And that's where I've come from. And isn't that true? I mean, isn't that true that somebody who may not be from Greater Austin, somebody who's from a different place, and they would say, that's my home, they can tell you all about it, can't they? I mean, imagine this. Imagine if this afternoon you go out and you have a conversation with a person at HEB. You just bumped into them and somehow struck up a conversation. And they say, hey, I'm not from Austin area. In fact, I am from Bigfoot, Texas. Did you guys know there's a Bigfoot, Texas? I did not know that until this week. I was like, there's a Bigfoot, Texas, which sounds right for Texas anyways. But there's a Bigfoot, Texas. Now imagine if that person says, yeah, I'm from Bigfoot. You're like, really? I've never heard of that. There's a Bigfoot. Yeah, there's a Bigfoot. Well, tell me about it. Well, I'll tell you about it. It's a population less than 500, established in 1865. And if you go to Bigfoot, you got to go to County Road 280 because there's Smith Ranch. Man, you got to go to Smith Ranch. That is the place to be if you ever go there because that's my home. That's where I'm from. I've been there a long time. And you have to go to the Bigfoot Park. Because the Bigfoot Park, if you've got kids, they're going to love it. There's swings, there's all kinds of fun things, and there's a cool pavilion in Bigfoot. And that's the pavilion where everybody hangs out on Friday night. That is the place to be. You go to Bigfoot, you got to go there. That's fun, that's adventurous. In fact, that's where I got engaged. That's where I got married. That's where we celebrate my kids' birthday parties. It is such a cool park. You got to go there. And in Bigfoot, you got to go to this really cool house because it's really cool. It's kind of this historic house. You go there, and you can go hear the story of William Wallace. Yeah. Yes. Are you from Bigfoot? I thought nobody would. This is so fun. Thank you for that. Anyways, but William Wallace is not the Scottish man you would think in the movie Braveheart. No, this is William Wallace from Bigfoot. And that's how it got its name, William Bigfoot Wallace. There's a whole story to this. And my point is this. You meet that person, that's their home, they're going to tell you everything about it, aren't they? And you're going to go, oh my gosh, man, I had no idea. That's amazing. In fact, now I'm prepared to go to Bigfoot. I know where to go when I go to Bigfoot. I know, how to get to Bigfoot. It's 2.5 hours from Austin. I know exactly how to get there. Jesus did the same thing. I'm just telling you, maybe you haven't read the Bible or the scriptures or, the teachings of Jesus through this lens. Man, from this point forward, I really want you to do it. Because Jesus said, for I am from heaven. He constantly talked about this. He wove it in the most direct ways. He wove it in the most subtle ways. He couldn't stop talking about home. In every single one of his teachings, he's like, oh my gosh, let me tell you, has implications. He incentivized followers of Jesus to live your lives in such a way for the reward in heaven to come because it has huge implications on your life. I mean, he just could not stop talking about his home. And all throughout his life, he talks about the way, the truth, and the life, and how you can spend eternity with him in his home. And it's so simple. He talks about how you live your life and its profound implications that these moral choices, relational choices, financial choices, business choices, whatever kind of choices, they're not trivial. He's like, no. Man, I know they're hard. I know it's going to come at a cost. I know you have a lot of feelings and desires and you want to do things that are going to make you feel like they're going to make you happy, but I'm telling you, I designed you. And I'm talking about lasting happiness. I'm talking about lasting meaning, lasting joy. And there's reward to come. Trust me, in my home. In fact, he tells us over and over, this is not your home. In fact, this life, you're going to have so much trouble and difficulty. I love that about Jesus. He's like, listen, I'm just telling you, I have my home. This is not yours. Trust me. Your home, there will be no more tears, no more death, no more struggle. That this is the home to come. And I'm here to tell you all about it. And Jesus over and over and over gives us this perspective that perhaps we've missed. So today, I just want to show you just one place. I mean, we could spend weeks and weeks and weeks talking about this. This is such a fascinating topic. But today in Luke chapter 12, I just want to show you one passage because it really has implications on how you spend your life and how you spend your time. And in Luke chapter 12, again, this is a fascinating passage where Jesus is talking to thousands of people. In fact, Luke, who's writing the letter of Luke, Dr. Luke, he tells us this. He's like, the crowd was thousands, literally thousands. And so Jesus is talking to a big crowd, and then, Jesus is talking about all kinds of things. He's talking about fear. He's getting to the point in his sermon all about fear. Everybody's leaning in. Thousands of people are all like, okay, Jesus is like, yeah, I have a lot of fear and all these kind of things. And then right in the middle of his points about fear, a gentleman stands up. And that person stands up and interrupts Jesus, interrupts the whole flow of what's happening. And that was amazing. It's an amazing moment. And guys, I've actually experienced that before here at Northpoint. A few years ago, you may have been here. I was talking, it's getting towards the end of the teaching. And I was in my flow, if you will, or, I was just trying to go like, you're getting there. And somebody stood up. And they raised their hand. They said, Pastor. And I was like, this is not planned. This is unusual. And I looked at him and I was like, yes, high-pitched voice. And then he said, can I have a word? And I was like, I don't know. I really don't. Because whatever you're going to say, it could be very polarizing. Everybody could run out of the exits. It could freak everybody out. I have no idea who you are. I don't know. This was not planned. And so, I just looked, made a judgment call, and I said, go for it. And so he shared, and what he shared was very valuable. But my point was that's what's happening in the midst of Jesus. I mean, everybody's looking at this guy. He's standing up. He interrupts Jesus. Jesus was giving some profound understanding about fear. And here's what the guy said when he interrupted Jesus. He said, Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me. In other words, Jesus, I understand this whole fear thing. I don't think I struggle with that. Jesus, I have something. My brother is being so mean, and he's not giving me the fair share of the inheritance. And that money's going to have a profound impact for my life. I deserve it. It's going to have implications for my kids. I mean, do you understand how unfair, how unjust? And it's clear to me that you seem to be a man from God. It's clear to me, I don't know how you're connected, but it's clear to me you have some sort of authority. No one's ever taught the way you taught or teach. It's clear to me that you have wisdom. Your insight into understanding of life is so profound. Jesus, can you just settle this? My brother's right here. Can you just tell him to do the right thing once and for all? And I love Jesus' response. Look at this. Jesus says, man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you? In other words, I'm not going to get involved in these matters. And at first glance, when you read this, you're like, Jesus, what are you doing here? Are you bailing on this? Are you not going to answer this guy's question? Are you not going to lean in and explain a truth here? And Jesus says, no, by no means. I'm actually going to lean in quite hard. In fact, Jesus gets to the heart of the matter and the heart of the question. As Jesus always did. And here's the thing about Jesus. I mean, he was asked hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of questions. He only answered about this many. Just very, very few questions. Because Jesus could see the heart. He always saw through whatever's going on, and he could see the soul, he could see the heart of the individual. And that's a good thing and a bad thing. The good thing is that this is why Jesus spent so much time with people who were nothing like him. In the first century, you read the stories, and the religious leaders just couldn't get over themselves because Jesus spent so much time with the outcast, so much time from people who had been excommunicated, kicked out of the Jewish temple. I mean, those were the people who were not going to the good place. Those are the people who God is mad at. And Jesus, you hang out with them the majority of your time. Jesus hung out with the worst of the worst sinners in the first century. In other words, the people who couldn't have sinned any more or any worse in that culture. He was like, I'll go have dinner with them. I'll hang out with them. And he liked people who were nothing like him, and those people liked Jesus. And the question is why? It's because Jesus just saw the heart. He saw the soul of the person. It was so clear to him. And he had no problem with all this guilt by association that was everywhere he went. The flip side of that, he could see the heart of the matter. He could see the religious games. He could see those moments we're trying to please you, God, look at all. And he's like, I'm going to call it what it is. And this was one of those moments. He could see the motivation, the heart of this man. And so Jesus, right in the middle of this, he calls out. The guy asks him a question. Jesus is like, hey, I've come here for bigger reasons, but I'm going to answer that question. And he responds this way. He says, watch out! Punctuation point. In the original language of the Greek, I mean, this is emphatic. This is like dramatic. This is one of those moments like, whoa, watch out for what? Is there a wasp? Like, Jesus, what's going on? I mean, is there danger coming my way? Why would you yell this? That was a little bit over the top, Jesus. A little bit dramatic. Watch out for what? He says, I'll tell you. Watch out. Be on your guard against all kinds of greed. What? That's not, what do you mean greed? We don't wrestle with greed. Greed's not an issue. I mean, that's the nature of greed. Greed is so difficult to see in the mirror. In fact, greed lives in the gray. Greed lives in that kind of emotional gray space to where you can always find a reason to say you're not greedy. You can always justify. You could tell me and you could explain logically, and logically I'd be like, I think you're not greedy. I think that's not, I mean, that's the nature of greed. That's how it works, right? Greed is never content. Greed says one word, and it says it every single day of your life. You got to know this. And if you know about greed, you know every day of your life, you got to be on alert because greed says something on replay or repeat over and over. It says more. More. I want more. Just a little bit more. More what? Just a little bit more money. Just a little bit more success. Just a little bit more likes. Just a little bit more physical, just a little bit more notoriety, just a little bit more, my family, just a little bit more of a house, just a little bit more of a car, just a little bit more, and that proverbial ladder that I'm climbing, just a little bit more. If I get a little bit more, then things are going to be good. Because greed has another voice, and greed subtly just kind of whispers into your heart, whispers into your mind, not only a little bit more, but greed makes some promises, and it makes us believe things like this. Greed says, hey, more will make me happy. If I just get a little bit more is going to bring me security. Man, I just want security. More is going to make me comfortable. I'd love to be comfortable. More is going to make me more powerful. Man, people are going to see me with power. More will make people love me. Man, I've been working so hard. I want people to say, do you see my worth? Do you see my value? More will make people respect me. Man, if I had just a little bit more, if I drove that kind of car, if I had that kind of bank account, if I had that kind of looks, if I had that kind of notoriety, I'd walk into a room and I have natural respect. People go, oh man, I don't know anything about you, but man, I want to talk to you. I want to learn from you. Tell me all your strategies in life. Why? That's what more is going to give me, respect. More will make people not leave me. If I just get more, she's going to stay. If I just get more, he's going to stay. If I just get more, they're going to stay. They're going to see the value and the worth of me. See, more is in that gray space, isn't it? Because you need to provide. But every day of your life, just a little bit more. Just keep going. That is greed. And Jesus says, watch out. Watch out. Why? He says, it's not life, or life does not consist in the abundance of possessions. In other words, there's something bigger. There's a bigger perspective on life to which, honestly, if we're honest, I think we'd want to push back because we'd go, no. That is not how I define life, because we define life exactly as this man who's saying, Jesus, give me the inheritance, tell my brother. Because we think, hey, no, more does make me happy, doesn't it? Because if you get a little bit more, you are a little bit more happy. More does give me more security. Isn't that true? More does give you more respect. I mean, you walk in with more physically, more relationally, more financially, more notoriety, more, accomplishments. People are going to respect you more, aren't they? I mean, this is why it's so tricky, isn't it? And this is why we want to push against Jesus. No, because that is life. Isn't that why you go to work? Isn't that why you stress out? Isn't that why you can't sleep at night sometimes? Isn't that why your worry is what it is? Isn't that why that's, the security, you want the security because for you and your family, and that's a good thing, isn't it? I mean, isn't that good? Isn't that what we want in life? Jesus, how dare you say that there's something bigger? Because that's what life is truly all about. Jesus, can you explain yourself? Jesus says, okay, I'll explain. In fact, let me tell you a story. And some theologians and Bible scholars said this is a made-up story. Some theologians and Bible scholars said this is actually a literal story of someone people knew in the first century. So Jesus goes, I want to give you perspective. Let me tell you this story. He says, okay, let's keep talking. He says, the ground of a certain rich man yielded an abundant harvest. He thought to himself, what shall I do? I have no place to store my crops. Now, this is the American dream. This is what we want, isn't it? I mean, this guy won the lottery. This guy, everything is going great. This guy, money is flowing in, notoriety is flowing in. Everything he puts his hand to is successful. I mean, he is feeling all kinds of security, all kinds of comfort, all kinds of dreams are about to come true for him. I mean, woo! I mean, life is good. The abundance of the harvest. I mean, every business idea is just coming to, every month, money is coming in. It is great. This is this guy's life. And then he begins to think to himself. The story continues. This is what I'll do because I have so much. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones. And there I will store my surplus grain. Why? Because you want more. My current barns aren't big enough. I need some bigger ones. I need some larger ones so I can have more. Because if I get more, I'll be happier. If I get more, I'll be more content. If I get more, it's more security for me, my family, my kids, my legacy. I just need more. Why are you going to tear down a perfectly good barn and build a bigger one? What is your ultimate hope? How do you define life? What is the outcome, mister? He says, this is why. Because then I'll have plenty of grain laid up for many years. And then I'll finally have what life is all about. I'll take life easy, eat, drink, and be merry. I will finally accomplish the American dream. My life will finally be good. Life is good. And isn't that what we want, guys? Come on, I'm part of you. We're part of humanity. This is why we chase what we chase. We do what we do. We work so dang hard. We spend the time. The reason why we spend the time the way we do. I'm with you. I get this because we want a good life. We want to experience the good life. And imagine just for a second, imagine if you did. Imagine in your life, just for a second, if this was true. Imagine if you had so much money in your bank account that you didn't even keep a budget. Imagine if you could buy whatever you wanted. I mean, you could go to Bass Pro Shop and you could buy a pontoon boat and a fishing boat. No problem. I mean, and you don't even worry about your bank account. Is it going low? Am I not going to be able to pay my bills? Are you kidding me? I mean, you just have that security. So much security. You can get what you want. You can do what you want. Imagine looking at your retirement, your kid's college savings account, and it just is up and to the right. I mean, man, it is so good. There is so much security in that. Imagine if that's true. Imagine if you're living in that home you've always wanted with the yellow picket fence, the white picket fence, the purple picket fence. Hey, whatever kind of picket fence you want because you have the money to do it, right? And you're walking in your kitchen, you're looking at everything you've always dreamed of in your kitchen and look at that stove and look at, that kitchen sink and the countertops. You're looking in your living room. You're walking to your kids' room. You're walking out back in your backyard with a pool and all this. Man, this is it. Life is good. And imagine driving whatever you want to drive. Man, it's just, it's a daily driver. But then I have this vehicle over here. This is fun. And this one over here, which is fast. Imagine that kind of life. And imagine this, the comfort, the worry. Man, you're experiencing so much comfort and very little worry. and all kinds of financial security. Whew. Is that not what we want? Life is good. Jesus says to the crowd, and all the crowd, I can imagine, wherever your thoughts are, they're probably very similar with the crowd. And then it's like the lights kind of go down. And Jesus whispers perhaps to the crowd, and he says, now that you picture that kind of life, and that's how we define it, he says, but God. What, Jesus? What? But God. Oh, well, I mean, I was just so focused on all the things I have. I don't have time for God. I don't really need God. I mean, he's the man upstairs. He's, hopefully he's good with me. I'm good with him. I'm good. But God? What about God, Jesus? What does God have to do with any of this? And then Jesus says, but God. But God said to him, you fool. It's like, Jesus, tell us what you really think. You fool. What? Yeah, you fool. A fool by definition is someone who lacks wisdom. Fool by definition is someone who lacks perspective. Fool by definition is someone who doesn't connect the dots, who doesn't understand how life is so connected. The bigger picture is short-sighted in their view. You fool. Jesus, how can you say this? He says, I'll tell you, you fool. This very night, your life will be demanded from you. Then who will get what you have prepared for yourself? You've lived your life for you. You've lived your life short-sighted. You've lived your life defining this is all there is. That is remarkably foolish, Jesus would say. Jesus, can you explain this? What are you saying here? What are you trying to teach us? And he's trying to teach us perspective. In fact, let me try to illustrate it this way. Here's what I want you to think about. What Jesus is getting at for you and I, he's saying, guys, I want you to think about life like this rope. That your life, my life, all of our lives is like this rope. And your life, oftentimes we think, no, my life is 70, 80, 90, 100 years. I mean, at best, that's what we're going to get, right? That's what we think about life. Jesus says, no. I am here to give you a better perspective. I am here to teach you something so profound that your life is this entire rope. That your life, yes, has a beginning, but this rope, imagine if it went back behind, backstage, and then went for eternity. Went for millions and millions and millions and millions eternity. He says, when you think about your life, this is your life. I'm trying to teach you this. I'm for you. I mean, you got to think of Jesus' teachings. He teaches all this. Then he goes, I die for you. Anyone who's willing to teach a lot of truths and then give their life for you, you've got to at least consider it. Jesus says, I'm not kidding with you. I'm telling you what's true. I'm trying to help you. I am so for you. Your life is eternity. It's not 70 or 80 years. That is a fallacy in perspective. It is eternity. But our temptation is to think of our life like this piece of red tape, all 5 inches. That this is the way, this is our perspective on life, that this is all there is. And if this is all there is, and there is nothing beyond this life, then yeah, live it up. If this is all there is, then yeah, just be focused on having a good life. Everything you get needs to be for you. Everything you get needs to be for your security, for your comfort, for your pleasure, for your joy. It's all yours because this is all you have. So stay focused on you and your kingdom. Build your kingdom. Get that second house, that third house. Get that third, fourth, fifth car. Get that next thing. Go on the 10th vacation, 20th vacation. Keep going because this is all you have. That's what we hear every single day, is it not? And Jesus says, guys, I get it. I understand that, you got bills to pay and kids to feed, and there's necessities and needs. Wants is a different conversation. Needs, I get it. But I'm trying to teach you. This is not all there is. Because what about this part of your life? Are you living for this part? And Jesus says, and then what about this part? And then what about this part? This is eternity. This is my home. This is where you're going to end up. And I'm here to prepare a place for you. That this home is adventurous. This home, you will never get bored. I mean, you're thinking like millions and millions and millions of years, I'm definitely going to get bored. And Jesus may step in and remind you, okay, who created the universe? It'd be me. 200 billion galaxies of what we know today. That means you at least have 200 billion years to go hang out, go to a galaxy per year. I mean, he's like, if that's what I did in the universe, do you think I am not divine and big enough for you to spend eternity of a life of adventure? What about this part? Jesus would say. What about that you will see your loved ones again? That in eternity to come, everything will be reconciled. All the questions you have, all the trauma, all the hardships, all the how could a good God. I mean, you understand this logically, that time is a prerequisite to see the big picture. There are things in life that you need 1,000 years to understand. Jesus knows that. You're never going to understand that in this little section of life. But Jesus says, are you preparing for this part? Because in this part, you're going to stand before a holy, infinite, perfect, loving, just God, and everything will be seen, everything will be reconciled, and every hardship, every mystery, every question you've ever had, your response to your Heavenly Father right here is going to be, oh, I just didn't know. That is so right. That is so fair. That's the most loving thing you could have done now that I see the big picture. Jesus says, guys, I get it. You see life this way. But I'm here to teach you there is something so much more, because what about this? What about that? What about that? Wraps up his teaching. Jesus says these words. He says, this is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but, big contrast, is not rich towards God. And I love that Jesus says this. He says, guys, listen, I'm not saying stuff is wrong. I'm not saying a good life is wrong. I mean, see, we jump to the dramatic so we can dismiss the truths of Jesus. Jesus is saying, I get it. Enjoy the things that my Heavenly Father has given you. That's part of life. But don't be short-sighted. Don't just live for this and be rich towards yourself and not rich towards the life to come. That Jesus is trying to teach you and teach me perspective. Perspective is to see the big picture. Perspective is wisdom. Perspective is something well beyond. He's trying to say, I want you to see as I see, because if you could see as I see, you would do as I say. And you would spend your time and your life the way I say, because it has profound implications in the life to come. That Jesus understood that changing your perspective will change your life. You change your perspective and begin to see as Jesus sees, you'll do things differently in your relationships. You'll do things differently with your moral choices. You'll do things differently with your finances. You'll do things differently with your time, which is your life. If you're willing to change your perspective and adopt the perspective that Jesus said and said, you are not citizens here, you belong here. This is your home. Quit trying to build your kingdom here. Jesus is so clear. Store up for yourself treasure in heaven. Quit storing up treasure here. Man, I love you. I'm going to give my life for you. I'm not trying to oppress you. I'm trying to prepare you to give you perspective. You change your perspective, you will change your life. So my question, and I do want you to think about it because it does have implications to your life and your time. What's your perspective on life? How do you see it? Because if you see it this way, and honestly, let's get very honest with this conversation. If this is it, then logically, you should live for yourself. You should. You have one life. You better live it up. And you better be honest about this life. Because honestly, if this is it, this is all there is, then every philosopher, every neuroscientist, every psychologist will tell you at the end of the reason, at the end of the logic, ultimately, it's meaninglessness. There is no purpose. There is no truth. You cannot prove that. There is no meaning. So you might as well stress it out. You should logically be stressed. You should worry a whole lot because this is all there is, and you will not see your loved ones again. That is a religious line to try to make people feel good, because this is it. Live it up. Live for yourself. Is that your perspective? Jesus says there's something so much richer, better. There is this perspective, an eternal perspective. A perspective to say, you will see your loved ones again. A perspective to say, you do not have to grieve like an ordinary person. Because yes, you have to be human, but there will be a day you see them again. A perspective to say there will be no more tears, no more pain, because you're going to be in the presence of a holy and loving Father. And yes, you will have freedom to choose what you want to choose, but in the very presence, daily presence of your Heavenly Father, you will choose to follow Him. That this is a life of adventure to come. That it is worth the sacrifice. It is worth the temporary things that you may not be comfortable with, or maybe it's going to cost a little bit of security, but it is worth it because you are storing treasure in heaven for the adventure to come. It means that your life today has a profound impact in the life to come. And Jesus says there is so much more in my home, and I go to prepare a place for you. And I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. I am going to give my life for that truth because I am the resurrection and the life. I want you to spend eternity with me. You may go, well, Buck, I need to know a lot more about this side of the rope. There's so much information out there. Jesus talks about it ad nauseum. The scriptures are full of it. In fact, one of the two best resources that I've heard personal friends say, the Bible has changed my life, and these two resources have changed my life. And these two resources are by Randy Alcorn. It's called a book called Heaven and a book called The Law of Rewards, that Jesus incentivizes you all the time to live your life, to trust Him, because there is reward that does impact your experience in the life to come. Jesus gave His life for these truths. All I'm asking you to do is to consider it. To consider life is far bigger than this 5 inches of red tape. Bottom line is this: having an eternal perspective keeps you on the path to a life of time well spent, not only in this life, but in the life to come, that you will be eternally grateful. Let me pray for us. Father, thank you again for your grace and your love and your willingness to come into this world and to teach us these profound truths that are hard to wrap our minds around, but yet are true. So God, this week, for the rest of our lives, would you remind us in your ways of this perspective, to live our lives with an eternal perspective. It has profound implications on everything we do and everything we say. We love you in Jesus' name, amen. Guys, thanks so much for being here. I'll see you next week.